I have one question.
Yes.
The scene with when Judy met Rick, I saw it at the D23 Expo,
Yes.
and it was longer.
Yeah.
Do you change it or?
Yes.
Okay.
We did. It's an interesting thing about our process, which is we make a scene, as you saw at Cannes or at Annecy, that is a certain way. And then as the movie starts to build, that scene needs to change to help the story. And so that was a scene that we loved. It was very funny. But that scene, in that case, Nick, as an audience member, you start to realize that Nick the fox is not telling the truth. But Judy doesn't see that. She still thinks he's telling the truth about his little boy. And what you realize is we're making Judy seem not smart, because the audience is now ahead of our main character, Judy. And so we had to go back into that scene and change it so that the audience doesn't know that Nick isn't telling the truth. It's important that the audience be in our protagonist, in Judy Hopps' eyes, in the same place. So we as the audience are where she is, thinking, here's a nice guy and his little boy. And this elephant is being mean to them. And so this Hopps, the bunny, comes in and she helps out. And we all feel good about that. And then we realize, wait a minute, the fox isn't what we thought. It's sort of turning it on its head. The fox actually is pulling a con and taking that jumbo pop he got for free and making money off of that. So that's why the scene ultimately ended up changing. We wanted the audience to be at the same place that our main character is, Judy Hopps. So we had to change that scene. It's hard. It's really hard sometimes. You love a scene, but it needs to, everything must be in service of telling the right story. So we have to change it.
So you choose a rabbit and a fox as the main characters. So why? And maybe why you didn't pick an elephant and a mouse?
I think partly because a couple reasons. One, a fox and a bunny are natural enemies in the real world, and we knew at a certain point we wanted to tell this story about predator and prey. So it felt like two animals that people understand are immediately at odds with each other, who have to now live together in the city of Zootopia. But there's a second thing, which is Byron Howard, who's the director of the film. He loves drawing rabbits, and Robin Hood is one of his favorite films of all time. And so for him, I think he also thought about, I love Robin Hood, I love that character, I love the story, so a fox. And nobody draws more appealing or more just, you want to hug him, rabbits than Byron. And so as he was drawing, he just kept coming back to the idea of drawing rabbits. So that gave us our two main characters, and then we built out all the other animals around that.
One simple question, why Shakira? Why have you chosen this scene?
Well, we love Shakira. We're big fans of hers, and for us, we wanted the film to have kind of a world. It felt like Zootopia is this whole world, and we wanted the person who was going to participate from the music standpoint to come from the world of music, somebody who around the world is known because that music works around the world. So that was one reason we said, well, Shakira really has a great world sound to her. But then the second reason is she's really involved in so many great charities and organizations, and she really cares about the world. And we didn't want to have a pop star character that felt like she was all about how does she look or how does she walk. We didn't want that. We wanted this character to really have depth. And because Shakira is such a wonderful, emotional, heartfelt person, she felt like the voice of Gazelle should be someone like Shakira, because she not only wrote that song and sings that song, Try Everything, but she's actually the voice of Gazelle. She speaks in the movie. Her character comes to life in the movie. And we wanted it to be from somebody who really had that same kind of, who was that person in the real world. And so when we met with her and we pitched the movie, and I said, she fell in love with the story, and we fell in love with her, it was true, because everything she said just felt like you are the character of Gazelle.
I ask you two questions this morning, another one. And do you have a relation with Walt Disney Imagineering during the production of this movie now or after?
What happens is John Lasseter, who's our boss, and he's amazing because he says we're not, even though we're part of this very large company, and there are many parts of the company that might have points of view as to what they would like to be, have the movie be. John's like, we tell our story first, and then we let the company build from there. So in the beginning, it's all about us just building our story. But then usually about a year and a half before the movie comes out, we start showing the movie to Walt Disney Imagineering. And we get them to start thinking about what could this potentially be in the theme park? Could it be a ride? Could it be a world? Could it be a backdrop to a restaurant? Could it be a place where there's other animals in the park? They're always thinking about those ideas, and they're thinking about it amongst the parks everywhere, whether it's Florida or Los Angeles or Shanghai or Paris or exactly all those parks. They look at it from that standpoint. So they are currently thinking about how do we take Zootopia and the characters and think about how they may make sense in the theme park. But we never do anything until, it takes a long time to build those things. So they start early on in development, but it may take years before something actually comes to the park where you can physically go see it.
Because when I see the scenes this morning, I want to visit the Zootopia for real.
That's great. Well, you should call them up. And you should say, I want to come. I'm kidding. They're great. They're great people, and they have such great minds who think about those kinds of ways. How can we translate it into the theme park?
Okay, no problem.
We'll do it right here in Paris.
Moi, oui, je lui demandais si la lapine était féministe, parce qu'elle est douée pour la reproduction, mais elle est seule.
She's asking if Judy is a feminist because she's a rabbit, she's alone, and she
No kinder. I have no kinder.
Well, I think when we started the film, we loved the idea of a character that was trying to push against what everyone thinks they're supposed to be, and that she doesn't let that deter her. And from the opening of the film until she joins the police force, everybody is saying, this is not going to happen. There's never been a bunny cop, ever, including her parents. And there were lots of conversations about, is that an okay thing to have her parents telling her, this is not going to happen? And we realized that parents do that because they're trying to protect their child from being hurt. That they want the best for their kids, but they don't want, they as a parent know a little bit more about how difficult that struggle is going to be, and they want to protect their child from having to do that. But Judy as a character is so strong and so determined that she says, I still want to go do this. And to us, that felt like kind of a great message. So is it feminist? No, I think it's an idea universally that all of us, whatever we're trying to show the world we can be, that we can go do it. I talk a lot about the fact, and I said it this morning, that I was in finance and thought I could never become a producer. But then someone said, if you want it, you can make it happen. You just have to go make it happen. And I did. And so in some ways, I can relate to both Judy and Nick from that standpoint, that they both are characters who are ultimately going to become something that people didn't think they could be. And we think that's a really great message, and universal around the world.
Zootopia is very original, but way to life is very real. How do you choose this element?
It's hard because there's so many different things you could ultimately do in terms of creating this world, but we wanted it to feel very believable and real. But it has to also feel like something we can relate to. So when we were designing the buildings for Zootopia, there was a point where the buildings became so, we wanted them to feel like an animal created them. And there's some buildings that look like forms. They're very organic in their shapes. The windows don't line up because there's animals of different sizes, so you've got to have small windows and big windows. And you look carefully at the buildings, they're all very different. But we also had to put in a few buildings that we know, that we as humans understand, where the world feels like it's science fiction. And we didn't want it to feel like a world we couldn't relate to. We needed it to feel like a world we know. So it's this great mixture of things we know and things we don't know. And the same thing is true with the animals. They're talking on phones, which we've never seen animals do, but then Judy twitches her nose and you realize she's still a rabbit. So it's those little things that we always try to think about in terms of how do we balance having the world feel very animal and fantastic and real like we've never seen before, but also something we can relate to. Does that answer your question? No?
Est-ce que ça répond à ta question? Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions?
So, this morning you talked about other animals that we cannot see in the movie. So have you thought about a sequel or maybe a TV show like The Lion King?
We, when we're developing the films, we never think about what else could come, but we always have ideas that we think, well, we'll just take that idea because it doesn't fit in this film, and we'll put it over here on a shelf. And maybe one day, whether it's a little short we might create, or whether it's a TV show, or whether it's another movie, we can take that idea and use it again. But we don't think deeply about that. We really are. John Lasseter always says the best business policy is creating a great movie, and then the rest will come if it's supposed to come. But sometimes that one story is all that needs to be told about those characters and those worlds. And that's what I really appreciate about John is we're not in the business just to keep creating the same thing over and over again. It's all about it must be a great idea. And if it is, then we'll go back into that world. So there's lots of fun left to be had, but it will only happen if we can find the right story to tell to go explore those other places.
Moi j'ai une question de Sandro.
Ouais.
Je voudrais savoir son avis en tant que producteur, comment il voit l'avenir du cinéma d'animation ou du dessin animé au cinéma, alors qu'il y a d'autres plateformes comme Netflix qui commencent à produire leur propre dessin animé et qui ne vont pas finalement passer par l'écran de cinéma. Je voudrais savoir son avis.
Ça marche. She would like to know how you plan the future in cinema production and mostly animation production, given that today we have platforms such as Netflix and so on who are developing their own animated films and shows and so on. So how do you see it?
Well, I think I always look at it as it's great if there's a lot of people doing animation because it means more people are watching animation. So I don't look at it as competition. I look at it as ways for the rest of the world to realize how great the animation medium is. And so to me, that's exciting. And they also will push boundaries that will influence things we might do. Or we may see things that get us inspired and vice versa. They'll learn from things that we're doing. And so it's kind of that sharing of stuff. That said, obviously the hardest thing is saying how do we make sure that people want to go to the cinema to see something versus watching it on their phone or on the computer. And I think for me, it's about creating a world that you need to see on the big screen. And having an experience that's better with an audience than just watching it by yourself. And that's one of the things I love about the movie Zootopia is I feel like it's this big world. And when she takes that train ride in, you want to see that on a big screen. You want to have great speakers. And when you watch the sloth scene, you want to see it with an audience and experience it with them and laugh with them as they're watching the scene. So to me, that's our job as filmmakers, is to make the experience be so great that you want to go see it in the cinema and not necessarily watch it on other platforms. But I'm excited by all the, every week another animated film comes out somewhere around the world that is reminding people that animation is a really amazing art form.
The movie seemed very funny. If you had to choose one Disney movie where the humor is exactly the same, which one it will be?
That's so hard because I think one of the things that I loved that John said to us early was he said, make it a modern animal movie. And I don't think I've ever seen those things combined. To me, what I love about the film is we have two incredible directors working on it. Byron Howard and Rich Moore. And both of them are they're funny. They're funny every single day. When you sit in a room with those two individuals, they make you laugh. And they have ways of looking at the world that always takes that whatever's happening and puts a fun spin on it. And so to me, I think the uniqueness of it is these two individuals and what they're bringing to the film in terms of storytelling and in terms of their theme. So I think there's a little bit of everything in there, but mostly to me, it's kind of a new place for Disney that I'm very excited about. And earlier, we were talking back at cinema that Disney actually has made all types of movies all over the course of these years. You're not kind of one thing. People think you might be, and we're really not. What we are is we're a studio that creates films that are very funny, with deep emotion, with characters that you're going to care about that will appeal around the world. That's ultimately what we're trying to do, and I think this fits in that same way, but also feels kind of new and modern and different. If that makes sense.
Okay.
Very good.
Merci beaucoup.
Oh, cool, thank you. Vas-y, c'est bon.
It's been 25 years you worked with Disney.
Yeah.
So I would like to know, you grew up with the classics, and how did you feel the first time when you saw an animated movie like Toy Story, and now we could see how real are the animated movies, so I would like to know.
Well, you're right. I did grow up with the classics, and I was lucky because my first movie was Lilo and Stitch, which is a hand-drawn movie with watercolor backgrounds. And so my first experience in making an animated film was that type of filmmaking. And then I went from that on to Bolt. Bolt was my first film as a computer-generated film. And I love both mediums for different reasons. I look at a film like Zootopia, and I feel like this is a movie because the world's so big and it's so immersive that it's a great world to be told through the medium of computer-generated animation. But we could easily think of other stories that should be told in the hand-drawn animation world, because both have great mediums to tell a wonderful story. But the thing that's amazing about what's happened, thanks to John Lasseter and Ed Catmull, is they've created technology that allows us to continue to push and go places we've never been before. And I think that's kind of an exciting thing. And we're always challenging ourselves to go further. But we never want to be photorealistic in terms of characters and world and everything, because then it could be a live action film. We always want to have some level of caricature in there that reminds people this is animation. And reminds people that there are people moving that character one frame at a time, 24 frames per second. So that still is a very I think people feel like the computer has taken away the handcrafted quality of it, but it hasn't. There's still people who every day are animators are moving each frame, 24 frames a second, getting it for every character to get the acting in there. They're making the choice of when does the eye blink, or how high does the eyebrow go, or what is the mouth shape we do. They're making those choices just like they did when they were hand-drawn. And the amazing thing, and I think people also forget this, is we start with a pencil and paper. Byron Howard, he started with a pencil and paper. He started drawing these characters himself. And we do that all the way through our storyboarding process, all the way through our visual development, which is all through paintings. So it's this great combination of both art forms coming together to create a great movie.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I take a picture?